Welcome to Harbor Point TV. We are a church of regular people without all the answers, seeking to create a safe place for both the curious and the convinced. So wherever you are on your spiritual journey, know you are welcome here. We trust God to do what we can: heal, transform, rescue, provide, and sustain. So whether you're watching at home or listening on your commute or even a run, our hope is that you might find and take your next step. There are some incredible opportunities to serve our community during this season by providing gifts to under-resourced families this Christmas. So to get more information, get connected, or to make a contribution, visit our website at harborpoint.church. This is Harbor Point TV.
Hey everyone, this is HPTV from Harbor Point Church in San Juan Capistrano, California. Welcome. Just want to let you know this is a church full of work in progress people who do not have all the answers and who certainly do not have it all figured out. But we are people who are doing our best to aim our lives at Jesus and to be shaped by Him. My name is Jeff McGuire, and I am really glad to be with you. Now, I was on a phone call this week. Maybe you can connect to this. I was talking to a volunteer. It's on Tuesday. And she says, hey, she said, what day is it? And I go, it's Tuesday. She goes, no, wait a second. What month is it? And I go, it's December 1st. She goes, and I thought this was great. She goes, wait, I wasn't ready for that. And I thought, isn't that how so many of us feel? In a year that's been unlike any other, we're still caught off guard by the whole thing. Like, oh my gosh, now it's December. I had no idea we had come that far. And it feels like we're managing more than ever. We got weird schedules. We have deadlines we still have to make. We have this sort of post-election haze, which is still kind of around. We're caring for our family members and trying to, send our kids to school. And then we're trying to deal with all the whatever else is going on. And gosh, it's just crazy. Now, maybe I saw this week. I know a lot of you saw this too. Maybe there's no better image for the way that we feel than this one right here. There's this guy right here. Story this week about a guy who was found on his boat, on his upside down capsized, boat vessel, 86 miles off the Florida coast. There he is. He's hanging on the bow of his boat. And this guy it just feels like for a lot of us, do you ever feel like you're just hanging out on the edge of this boat, just trying to stay alive? Like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of here, and I hope someone sees me because I don't know how much longer I can hang on. Well, that's what this guy's dealing with. And I think everybody during this season wants the same thing, no matter who you are. I think all of us could agree that one of the things that we want more than anything else, and again, no matter who you are, one of the things, the central themes, the promises connected to Christmas is this right here: peace. We want peace. Now, there's like predicted titles that are bestowed upon Jesus before he arrives, and it's like 750 years. Here's the prophet Isaiah. He says it this way: for unto us a child is born. Maybe you've seen this before at Christmas. Unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called. Notice these four titles: Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and lastly, Prince of Peace. I mean, then when you get to the time of Jesus' arrival, 700 some years later, there's these shepherds out in the field. Famously, you know this story as well. Luke chapter 2 says this: but suddenly a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, again talking to the shepherds, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest heaven. Notice what the angels say: and on earth, peace to those on whom his favor rests. I mean, the whole thing, this whole buildup, one of the central promises about Christmas is about peace. And for so much of it, we just have this sense that maybe, though we're not always sure about it, we don't always feel it. One of the things that you see from the Bible is that there's this running theme, and it's all building up to this moment in which people are supposed to experience peace, whether or not we feel it. Now, last Sunday marked the beginning of a season we call Advent. You probably have heard of it before. Again, I used to think when I was a kid growing up, I thought this is just a description of a particular kind of calendar that has some hidden chocolates in it that now we try to keep our dog from eating. Nearly every year, our dog eats all of the chocolate, and everybody says that your dog died, and our dog didn't die. He just was sick and was miserable, but that's what happens every single year. We get an Advent calendar, but Advent does not mean chocolate calendar. It means something else. It literally means it's another word for the word arrival. Now, this whole idea of arrival is about, this Advent season is about the anticipated arrival of Jesus. And for a lot of people, and we're just trying to make it to Christmas, the whole anticipated excitement about Jesus, we actually, for a lot of us, feel like maybe there's a part of us that says, look, there's so much stress leading up to and about this season of Christmas that we don't want to miss out on the really great stuff that also comes with it because it's just so tough. Now, what we started asking about this last week is, what if we could take a page maybe out of, sort of a recent past, maybe a kind of a recent Christmas classic that's worth looking at, and maybe even though it's not an overtly Jesus-y movie, there's something worth thinking about, because if we took a page out of this Christmas classic, A Christmas Story, what we'd find is that this little boy who's, to give you the overview, there's this little boy, Ralphie here, it's in the 1940s in Indiana. He's sort of moving from being a little boy on into being sort of a little kid, or a bigger kid, if that makes sense. But he's got this quest to famously acquire a Red Ryder BB gun, a 200-shot range model air rifle with a compass and stock and the thing that tells time. Not that I memorized or know about it, but it's just one of the things people have been saying. Anyway, but he's got this quest to get this BB gun. And it's a story about overcoming bullies. There's the greatest bully name of all time, Scut Farkas. Scut. I have a son named Scott. For the longest time, I thought his name was Scott, and it's not. It's Scut. So I hate Scott. Anyway, he's a bully. But it's a story about gaining respect of a father. And it's also about a group of friends, about being a part of a group of friends who are essentially triple dog daring each other into living life with courage and to conquer fear. And the movie raises this really important question for us. And again, it's not like it's this most outlandishly clearly just communication about Jesus, but it does raise a question. What if we approached Christmas as though we had been triple dog dared? Not to merely get through it or to make it, but to make this the best Christmas ever. Now, as we think about all of that stuff, about making the best Christmas ever, because I know what you're feeling. I know, I can feel it. You're like, I want it to be the best. But I just feel like I've already had enough adventure. I've sailed through the stormy seas. I feel like a guy on the bow of my boat. I've been stuck at sea. Enough adventure. Just, if there's going to be any water, I want it to be a jacuzzi. I get it. I mean, me too. I mean, you're crying out, give us peace, heat up the spa, Jesus, let's get that going. And this raises another deeper, more critical issue for all of us. Because for all of us who want peace, there's really only two ways to go. And it's really important that we talk about these. And this is kind of critical. Here's what it is. There are really only two ways that this can go for those of us who want peace. It's this. It's either keeping the peace or it's making peace. There are really only two ways we go. Keeping peace or making peace. Now, we are well accustomed to being people who keep peace. We learn it very early on from our parents. We learn it very early on at our Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's an early life skill we get that says, look, you're going to have to keep the peace. Ironically, what happens for the most of us, and by the way, you've all been in these situations. This year may be a little different, fewer people at your gatherings and stuff. I get that. But my guess is there's been times where someone just said, you're going to have to play nice, or I get that there's some issues with uncle whatever, or cousin so-and-so, but you're going to have to not deal with it. I need you to just keep the peace. And the irony, of course, is that it is the most difficult thing to keep the peace after people have said their piece. Almost always, it's the most difficult thing to keep in mind. Now, these two things are incredibly different, and we're going to talk about these two things. And I would say this, the Bible has a very, very strong kind of bias for which one it favors, because keeping peace and making peace are way different things. Check this out. Jesus is with his disciples this is after his last supper. He's about to be arrested, and he's giving his disciples some things to think about. As he's kind of parting with them, one of the things he says is this: peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. Now, his intent is to give his disciples peace. This is clearly what he's saying here. But I want you to notice, though, this pronoun, my peace. I want you to notice this pronoun, my peace, because it's really going to matter in a second. Because clearly what he's talking about is something different than other kinds of peace. It's his kind of peace. Keep on reading. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Don't let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. I don't give it as the world gives. Now, here's why that matters so much. This implies that the conventional understanding of peace, whatever it might be, is not what he's offering. In fact, in the first century Mediterranean, the way people would have understood this idea of peace comes to us from the idea of Roman peace, what's known as the Pax Romana. And the Pax Romana is essentially this. It's an iron fist in a velvet glove. What would happen often in no uncertain terms is basically that the Romans would show up and say, look, here's what's just happened. We've conquered you. If you don't like it, we're going to destroy you. So don't resist. That's our peace. Pax Romana. And Pax Romana was peace through military might and through dominance. But Jesus says, my peace I give to you. I don't give it as the world gives. I give it in a completely different way. And in the Bible, you get this kind of this theme that shows up about the idea of peace. It's associated with the Hebrew word shalom. This is literally the translation of the word peace. And it's different than you and I might think about peace. Most of us have an understanding about peace in that it has to do with the idea of there's no conflict. But there's something way more important when it comes to this idea, the biblical idea of shalom, than just merely no conflict. It has to do with something else, which is this: restored wholeness, where nothing is broken and nothing is missing. That's a way different picture than just merely having an absence of conflict, because lots of broken people can keep peace in the midst of brokenness and things that are missing. But shalom, the peace of the Bible, is about restored wholeness where nothing is broken and nothing is missing. Now, it is almost impossible to talk about peace in the Bible without also associating it with this: reconciliation. The two things show up back to back all the time. And reconciliation, the simplest way to describe it is this: it's bringing back together whatever has been separated. That's it. Bringing together whatever's been separated, that's reconciliation. And peace and reconciliation go together a lot in the Bible. Now, here's what Jesus' peace and reconciliation project is all about. The Apostle Paul will describe it this way in Colossians 1. He'll say this: for God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, meaning Jesus, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, which means these things were previously separated from God, whether things on earth or things in heaven. Keep on reading. By making peace, restoring back to wholeness. Keep on reading. Through his blood shed on the cross. In essence, what's happening is this: according to Jesus, or Jesus' version of making peace or accomplishing reconciliation, what's going to happen is this: that the one making the peace, which is Jesus here, will have to endure the highest price, which is on the cross. The one making peace endures the highest cost. The way Jesus makes peace possible is it's at his own expense, through the blood of himself shed on the cross. And that reality, as we look at it, that reality of Jesus making peace for us with him is not only intended for individuals and God. His peace is also intended for people with other people. And the church is probably one of the toughest testing grounds, unfortunately, for this because of its history, but it's really kind of amazing. In the first century, there's this vibrant city in Turkey. It's called Ephesus. And in Ephesus, by the way, the ruins today are still really well preserved. You could actually go check it out if you wanted to. But it's culturally an incredibly Greek city. And as the church is expanding, a church gets planted in this city of Ephesus. Now remember, the first people who followed Jesus aren't Greek-speaking. They're Greek speakers, but they're not Greek culturally. They're Jewish men and women who start finding themselves around Jesus and who start saying, this guy is probably the Jewish Messiah we've been waiting for, the rescuer, God's chosen person. So the initial group of people are all Jewish, and then as more and more people start joining in to follow Jesus and being attracted to this message of Jesus about life and transformation and hope and all these other things, the sort of demographic of the church begins to change. Now all of a sudden there's these Greek people that start joining, and this is a huge problem, because when people with a shared history and shared expectations about behavior and cultural norms all share the same room, everything goes smooth. But the people in Ephesus, their history is about worshiping this goddess Artemis, which in Latin, the Romans would have called her Diana. But this goddess Artemis was a fertility goddess in which there were incredibly wild festivals that happened. I just want you to imagine, not too much imagination here, but fertility festivals often involved fertility kinds of stuff, if you know what I'm saying. And that's all that's going on in these parties. So both of these people that are in this church in Ephesus, both regarded the other as crazy, as insane, as offensive. Now, that's the early church that's gathered together in this place in Ephesus, and they're a divided group. And then these people, they start getting together and they start following Jesus, and all of this stuff starts to take place. And what starts happening in the early church, and it almost divided the church forever, is that people started saying, we got to do one of two things. The more mild of the two was, look, we're going to have two different churches, kind of this Greek, kind of culturally Gentile church. We're going to have those people do a thing, and then we're going to have a Jewish church. But what most of the case, what happened was this, is that the Jewish people in the church said, people who want to follow Jesus, who's our Jewish Messiah, we need them to become Jews first. And it almost split the church. Now, all of this starts to happen. Let's check out Ephesians chapter 2. Again, the Apostle Paul writing to this group of people who is a divided group. Remember, Paul is a Jewish leader. That's his own heritage is as a Jew. He even calls himself at one point the Jew among Jews. I mean, he is through and through this. Here's what he says. Check this out. Ephesians 2:13, but now in Christ Jesus, you. Now the you here is probably not addressing his own people. Some scholars will say what he's probably doing is actually addressing the Gentiles, the Greek audience in his letter here. But now in Christ Jesus, you who once were far away have been brought near by the blood of Christ. You people have been put into this story about God's work through the Jewish people in the world. Okay, that's what that's saying. Keep on reading, verse 14. For he himself is our peace. Now we have you, and now we have our. Jesus is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility. In other words, there was some hostility that divided them. Some people will say that the dividing wall mentioned here is about a reference to the temple courts, in which there was a court of Gentiles and a court of Jews, and you could not have the two mixing. And what you have in this case is that somehow what Paul's writing is what used to divide us is now gone. What used to be separated is now being brought together. He is our peace. Verse 15. His purpose, here's Jesus' purpose, was to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace. His purpose is to create in himself one new humanity. There's two people totally divided, create out of the two to make one, thus making peace. Over and over and over again, you see hand in hand with the idea of peace is reconciliation being brought back together. And then Paul will just sort of continue on. He'll say these other words. He'll just say, look, and in one body to reconcile both to God through the cross, by which he put to death their hostility. The cross, Jesus says, ends the hostility and the division. And then Paul will put a stamp on it in verse 17 saying, he came and preached peace to you who were far away and peace to those who were near. Now, in all of that, the early church, it seems, is not only the recipient of this kind of connection, this kind of rebuilding, reconciliation between God and human beings. The church is also going to be something else. It's going to be the proving ground of reconciliation and peace. The church is the physical evidence of the peacemaking work of Jesus. The church, which means the people who belong to Jesus, are the physical evidence of the peacemaking work of Jesus. The peace and reconciliation work of Jesus is going to be evidenced by the people that follow him. Now, maybe that's part of the peace Jesus brings. Like, his peace is for his people, but it's also through his people. And make no mistake about it, peacemaking is incredibly hard work. It is. So what do we do with that? Let me just clarify really quickly the difference between peacemaking and peacekeeping. First, let's start with this. Peacekeeping. Peacekeeping's motivation is fear and its goal is avoidance. That's generally how it works. When I was growing up, and my cousin and I talk about this from time to time. We remember, I don't have a huge family, but being at my dad's parents' house, when there was ever tension at Thanksgiving or Christmas, and some of you may have some version of this, my grandmother was the one who would start saying at some point, you'd start to feel the tension, whatever. And a lot of times I wasn't savvy enough to know what was going on with the grown-ups in the room. But she would just go like this. And she was half joking, but not really. And everybody knew not to mess with her, because here's what she would say. She would just go, everyone starts escalating. She'd just go, how happy we are, how happy we are. And everybody would stop. Like, okay, we're gonna laugh a little bit about this. We're getting escalated, but nobody else gets to say anything else. She's just keeping the peace. How happy we are, how happy we are. Okay, let's pass the peace. I mean, whatever else that is going on that you say at a dinner table. But it's about playing nice and not ruffling feathers. And peacekeeping is about short-term thinking. It's about short-term thinking. Meaning, let's just deal with this right now. Down the road, we'll deal with other stuff, but right now we're going to deal with this stuff. Only this. It's about keeping things tidy, and it is about maintaining the status quo. It is not about introducing new things. It's about maintenance. That's peacekeeping. Now, as we talk about all of that stuff, there is some reason to kind of pull that. There's some benefit to this, because all of us have done it, and all of us have learned it at some point in our lives. But there's another way to think as well, which we talked about, which is peacemaking, which, unlike peacekeeping, whose goal is avoidance and his motivation is fear, peacemaking is motivated by love and whose goal is reconciliation. Peacemaking is motivated by love and its goal is reconciliation. And we think about that, it begins to give us something a little bit different, because remember, reconciliation is about bringing back together separated things. That's what reconciliation is about, and it is a long-term kind of focus. I remember one of the things we did over this past several weird months was Amanda and I were like, you know what? Marriage is awesome, but let's take it to the next level. Let's go to some counseling. I just want to tell you, I'm so for counseling. You should do it. It's great. You have blind spots in your life that you sometimes need an expert to help you see. We went to this counselor, and I was like all fired up. And it took about 5 months, all in, or maybe more. And about 3 months in, I was like, what did we just do? All we did was unearth stuff. Now it's exposed. Now whatever we buried in the yard, we just brought back and put it on the dinner table. And now we're talking about it and poking at it and looking at it and making fun of it and whatever else it is we got to do. And I'm like, why did we do this? It's such a mess, because that's the other part of it. It doesn't happen soon enough, and it's so unbelievably messy. Peacemaking, taking things to a new, there is something about that is not neat. It is messy, and it is always introducing something new. That's what peacemaking is all about. Making peace starts with a discontentment with how things presently are. Peacemaking is it starts with a discontentment with how things already are. Now, those are the two different things. And in both cases, I should say, all of us are really good at this, and some of us are good at this. But this is what we're called to, peacemaking. Some of us are really good at peacekeeping, but we're all called to peacemaking. And to try to drive a finer point on it, let me just put it in these terms. Here's a visual picture of what the two look like. Peacekeeping looks like a man standing on his bow, trying to get comfortable with being there overnight in the dark. That's peacekeeping. And peacemaking is about a man being rescued, where his circumstances are made different. That's the difference. So let me ask you this. As we start to look at this whole thing, for a lot of us, we'd rather hold on to a sinking boat than go through the hassle and the embarrassment of a rescue. And the truth is, being a peacemaker requires a kind of triple dog dare sort of courage. And peace always comes at an incredibly high cost. And reconciliation, now notice this, listen. The reconciliation process rarely looks like victory. Occasionally, reconciliation looks like a series of lost battles, and that's why to be a peacemaker is a triple dog dare kind of thing. So here's what I want to do. Let's look at a couple questions I want to wrestle with, and we'll wrap it up with these. First is this. Who or what am I avoiding? This is the peacekeeping kind of analysis for ourselves. Who or what am I avoiding? Are there some things that you're going, look, I know there's some stuff in there. We know we can't say X, Y, and Z words with these people because it'll trigger them into some other thing. And maybe there's some things I'm avoiding. Maybe there's an issue I can't talk about. Maybe you can identify what it is. Maybe you can't, but maybe there's some things as a person you know you don't want to see. Maybe it's a parent, or it's a coworker, or it's a spouse even, who you're like, I'm trying to avoid them because I just don't want to ruffle any feathers. I just want to keep the peace. Now, next question. With what or who or what am I appeasing? What's so important to keep in mind is that with what issue or what person am I allowing myself to cave, to be taken advantage of, to keep the peace? This is essentially like this. So many people would say, look, I'm really good at sort of peacemaking. I just absorb everything. I take it all in. I just want to give you an analogy. I want you to imagine that when we're just merely appeasing people, what we're doing is we're gathering lava and stuffing it back into the volcano so that nobody else gets burned except us. And the truth is we can only do that so long before we explode. Who or what am I avoiding? Who or what am I appeasing? And lastly, this will be surprising. Who or what am I attacking? Now, a lot of us forget that attacking is actually a means of keeping the peace. We don't think of it that way, but that's actually what it is. We blow up early and big in a conflict so that in some way we can deter anything else bad from happening. And it's about keeping control over circumstances, which gives to us a kind of peace. That's our default. This is what we tend to do as we're people who just keep peace. We avoid, we appease, and we attack, because that's a manner of keeping ourselves at peace. And when it comes to peacemaking, I want you to ask a couple different questions, which is this. Number one, what am I responsible for? What am I responsible for? There's a role that you and I have been given, and that is to be peacemakers, to seek reconciliation. And part of that recognition is that we are also human beings who sometimes find themselves in conflict because of the stuff that we've done. Look, here's what James says. James 4:1, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? In other words, this is essentially saying this, that it's not always those jerks over there who are responsible for whatever is going on. Sometimes, yes, it is not you, it is me. It really is. It really is me. And sometimes that's actually the truth. The Bible will say sometimes we got stuff within us that we ought to deal with? What is it that's the quarrels and fights that are within you that come from your desires that have to be dealt with? Sometimes we have to say, I'm responsible for some stuff here, and I really did blow it. I heard someone say once, one of the most effective things you can say in any argument that will save a marriage, a relationship, a friendship is these words. I thought this was brilliant. The pastor I heard this week say this. This is the phrase. I'm sorry, I was only thinking of myself. The amount of times, the amount of arguments I could have saved, the pain I could have saved. Look, I'm responsible for what I did because I was only thinking of myself. That would be a game-changing kind of statement there. Now, what's really important to keep in mind, though, is this. On the other hand, you are not, and some of you have this, you have an over-responsibility issue, you take on more than you need, and I just want to let you know, you and I are not God's one and only Savior for the world. You and I are not God's one and only Savior for the world. We have an over-responsibility complex, which essentially is a means of peacekeeping, and it's not a means of peacemaking. So what are you responsible for, and what are you not responsible for? Now then, this gets at the heart of the triple dog dare, and I just want to tell you, in some ways, it's probably the most critical question for a lot of us. I know it is for me, but it's this question right here. What am I waiting for? What is it that I'm waiting for? I mean, I'm not advocating for haphazard unthoughtfulness when you go into conversations or things where things are not working out exactly as they ought. But what am I waiting for? Because it's so easy to delay necessary things because they're hard. Peacemakers have a bias for action and a low tolerance for the simmering kind of division that keeps people at a distance. For me, it seems like I spend an inordinate amount of time and energy trying to increase my tolerance for divisive and broken issues in my life, issues that need a peacemaker to resolve them. What are you waiting for? You know, why don't you make the first move to resolve conflict, to step into those things? If there is a peacemaking moment for you that's presenting itself over the next couple of weeks, I triple dog dare you to step into it courageously, to step into where God's calling you to make peace, not just merely keep it. So once again, I triple dog dare you. And may God bless you in your peacemaking effort.
As we enter into a moment of worship and reflection, what are you avoiding to keep peace? What barriers need to come down?
You will stay true, even when the loss comes. Your word remains true, even when my thoughts don't line up. I will stand tall on each promise you made. Let the rest fade away. There's a peace far beyond all understanding. May it ever set my heart at ease. Dare anxiety come, I'll remember that peace is a promise you keep. Peace is a promise you keep. You will stay true, even in the chaos. Your word remains true, even when my mind wreaks havoc. I will be still, for I've known all along. My Jehovah Shalom, there's a peace far beyond all understanding. May it ever set my heart at ease. promise he keeps. Oh, you keep your promise. Oh, you are peace to a restless soul, peace when my thoughts wage war, peace to the anxious heart. That's who you are, that's who you are. Peace when my fear takes hold, peace when I'm feeling close, peace when I lose control. That's who you are, that's who you are. I found peace far beyond all understanding. Let it flow when my mind's under siege. All anxiety bows in the presence of Jesus, the keeper of peace. And peace is a promise he keeps.
Thank you for joining us. If you would like to reach out to a pastor to talk about some possible next steps, get information about attending or viewing one of our live gatherings, or to make a contribution, be sure to visit our website at harborpoint.church. Also, don't forget to take a look at the discussion questions on our website to help you keep the conversation going.